What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another retro Yu-Gi-Oh video. We got another format, and that means another deck of elemental heroes. I sort of like watching the growth of this deck over time throughout these different formats that I'm covering, the GX era and beyond, because it's a very iconic deck, and it's cool to see where it sort of picks up each of its individual tools. Now, I will say in Chaos Return format, the deck didn't get too much. Yes, it did get the Emergency Call, which is a very powerful searcher, and it did receive some new fusion monsters, but they're not really the best things in the world, so I'm probably going to go a different direction with this deck. Now, last format, Reaper format, I showed off Wild Heart Control, which was a very cool deck, but it wasn't playing around with the fusion stuff, even though Elemental Heroes did get a variety of new monsters there. And I figure this format, let's go back to the sort of fusion strategy, see if we can make that work in any meaningful way. Now, on screen in front of you here, I sort of laid out the basic monsters that we're considering, spells that we're considering as well, and then the fusion monsters here as well. I figured it was helpful to lay out each of the elemental hero main deck monsters that actually do things. So Bubble Man is a special summon and potentially a draw. Blade Edge is basically a piercer, which is on a big body that can be brought out off Necro Shade, which is basically a free tribute. We've got Wild Heart here as well, which stops traps, which is good enough to build its own deck around. I think it's probably still good enough to build that deck around in this format as well, Chaos Return format. But, you know, we're moving away from that sort of thing to try and build a fusion deck here instead. And then in terms of the normal monsters, I just put Sparkman and Clayman here. You could include the others, but I included these because Clayman has the highest defense on a normal monster and Sparkman has the highest attack on a normal monster. So I figured it was good to show these off. In addition, we've got the spells H-Heated Heart, Emergency Call, Our Righteous Justice, and O Oversoul. Each of these do something a bit different. H-Heated Heart gives a monster a 500 attack point boost and attacks defense monster. I'm going to say right off the bat, this is very underwhelming to me. I don't think we're going to be using this one, but you never know what will happen. The Emergency Call is the best of these. It searches out an elemental hero monster from your main deck to your hand, which is very, very helpful to sort of set up the fusion plays that you want to be doing with this deck. Our Righteous Justice can pop spell traps, which is also pretty good. Now, it has to be spell traps equal exactly to the number of face-up elemental hero monsters you control, but you know, you can sort of maneuver that a bit to make it more worthwhile. So, you know, the only real downside is if you've got like 3 elemental heroes and Our Righteous Justice, you know, there just aren't enough spell and traps to pop, then that can be rough. But I think as a spell trap remover, this is fine. I don't necessarily think it's better than like MST or Heavy Storm or something, but it is something that you can consider in the deck. We got O Oversoul to revive an elemental hero normal monster from our graveyard. Right now, we don't really have the best targets. You know, we do have Sparkman for attack, but not really the best thing in the world. But, you know, if we are building around the elemental hero normal monsters, we do have Hero Flash here, which is a spell card that says banish H-Heated Heart, Emergency Call, Our Righteous Justice, and O Oversoul from your graveyard. Special summon 1 elemental hero normal monster from your deck, and then all elemental hero normal monsters you control can attack your opponent directly this turn. So you can potentially set up a big play. You activate O Oversoul to bring back the Sparkman, Hero Flash out another Sparkman, then you get 3,200 attack points directly. I don't think that's that good. It's a very underwhelming payoff at this point. So I don't think that I'm going to be playing this combo here, but it is good to sort of have here initially just to consider. So I'm just going to get rid of Hero Flash there from our potential deck pool here. Because we're getting rid of that, I am just also going to get rid of H-Heated Heart because I don't really think there's much we can do with that. And I do think that O Oversoul just doesn't have the payoff in this format. So I'm going to get rid of those because I don't think we can really use them effectively. Now let's look at the fusion monster because that's what we're sort of leading into here. We're trying to go into our fusion deck a bit more. Now, you can play all of these because we have an unlimited fusion deck in this format. So, you know, you might be wondering, well, why am I focusing on this when you could just go into all of them? Well, the reason for this is we don't necessarily want to play every elemental hero in our deck. And we don't necessarily need to go into every single elemental hero, right? While there are instances where, let's say, elemental hero Mariner could come up. It's a 1,400 attack point monster that can attack directly when you have face down cards in your spell and trap card zone. So that's 1,400 burn if your opponent's at low life and they've got a field full of monsters. Then this can be brought out to go in for game that way. But I think that most of the time you're not building your deck considering like, oh, I got to go into Mariner now, right? And this is important too because we probably want to play things like King of the Swamp, which is a very good fusion substitute thing. Also, what we should do in general when doing this sort of thing is King of the Swamp not here? We can go to release date and then we can type it in. That makes it a bit easier to filter through. Maybe I just mistyped this, but yeah, King of the Swamp is probably a card we want to include here because it's very good at searching out polymerization and also it serves as a fusion substitute monster for our stuff. So because we're playing these King of the Swamps, I think that, you know, we can play 3 and then potentially play some amount of polymerization. And this may seem weird given that we're also playing this Miracle Fusion, which is just the better form of polymerization in a lot of ways, but this card's not searchable by King of the Swamp, and once King of the Swamp's in graveyard, it fuels your Miracle Fusion, so I think it's worth it for that reason. Also, let's, while we're here talking about Miracle Fusion, let's just put in 3 Miracle Fusions, because I feel like this is a very, very good combo. We might not keep it with these ratios, we might not be playing 3 polymerization by the end of this. I think we will still be playing 3 King of the Swamp, but I think either way, Triple Miracle Fusion makes sense to me, and Triple King of the Swamp makes sense, so let's just fill that in now. But anyway, back to the Fusion monsters themselves. I don't really think there are too many, super good ones here. I think that Elemental Hero Rampart Blaster and Elemental Hero Shining Flare Wingman are the best ones. Elemental Hero Rampart Blaster is a pretty good monster. Basically, you can just sit on it in defense mode. It's got a big defense at 2,500, and it can just attack indirectly to your opponent's life points each turn for 1,000. We could potentially play Level Limit Area B with this card, but Level Limit Area B is limited, so I'm not sure if focusing on that sort of direction is the best. In addition, that shuts down our other fusion monsters, so I don't really like that approach to it, but it's a very cool card and not a bad fusion monster to go into, especially because we are likely going to be playing Clayman in our deck anyways to get good stats, so it makes sense to have it here as one of our vanilla heroes that we're playing around with, right? I also think that Shining Flare Wingman, very good card here. It's a 2,500 attack point monster, but it buffs itself up for each elemental hero monster in our graveyard. Now, it does have anti-synergy with Miracle Fusion, but Miracle Fusion is so strong that we probably just want to play it anyways. But the kicker here is that also when it destroys a monster by balance in the graveyard, you get to inflict damage equal to that monster's attack to your opponent. So that's kind of nice. And I mean, it's just a big body too, so that's pretty good. It is a bit worse against these sort of macro warrior decks that are running around in the format. But, I think this deck just suffers against those sorts of decks in general. So I don't really think that's that big of a deal. Now, some way that we can get rid of those decks is through something like Elemental Hero Wild Wingman. So this is basically a way to remove our opponent's spawn traps. It's Elemental Hero Wildheart and Elemental Hero Avian as the main materials, and you get to discard a card to target one spell or trap on the field and destroy that target. So I think this is also a pretty good card here, and of those 2 monsters, we probably want to play Wildheart. So right now, we're sort of building our core of Elemental Heroes that we're actually playing in the deck. So Sparkman, Clayman, Wildheart, those should all be in the deck. I think that makes a lot of sense personally. Wildheart can also enable access to Wild Edge, which is also a pretty good monster overall. It must be fusion summoned, and then this card can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each with 2,600 attack. That's pretty good. Now, there is the question, do we play Blade Edge in the deck as well? Because, we are playing Wild Edge, or maybe going into that, and Blade Edge is maybe a decent card. It's 2,600 attack, and so maybe we do want to play a copy of this or two. I think it's fine to not include it, but it is something that you can potentially play if you want to. Are there any Bowman's specific fusion monster that we really care about here? I feel like Steam Healer is not really that good. It can gain us life points, but 1,800 attack is kind of weak. Let's see. Mariner, not really that good either. I don't think there are any really good Bowman fusions here, so we're not building for that, but it is something to keep in mind. Maybe Tempest we don't need at all. That's also a card that we don't really want to build to. I think honestly, I'm going to keep these on screen here, but I think we can cut some of them because there's no way that we're ever going into them, right? We're not playing Brasinitrix or Avian, so we can cut Flame Wingman, and also Phoenix Enforcer is just a Wingman, but it can't be destroyed by battle. I think that we do keep in the Shining Phoenix Enforcer because while it is a worse version of Shining Flare Wingman, it can come up. And again, we have an unlimited fusion deck, so it's good to keep in mind that we can play this in addition to any other card that we might need. So we're not really limited by space. Let's see here. I mean, Necro Shaman, also not really the best card in the world. Very, very, situational. But I do think it can come up, and if we're playing Wild Heart for the Wild Wingman anyway, it makes sense to just keep here. Tempest we don't need. That's 3 elemental heroes, and, it doesn't really do much on the field, so I don't really think it's that good. We can probably take out Steam Healer. Oh, okay. If we're playing Bubble Man, then we might want to keep Steam Healer here, just as a reminder. But either way, I think we've cut down our list of elemental heroes, to a pretty decent degree. And now we got to think about what other cards we want to play in the deck as well. So moving on to just sort of generic staples before we finish cutting down our core too much or adding to our core too much. It's always good to just go limit for the April 2006 limited list here. And just, search by, I mean, it doesn't really matter alpha release date on this, but I do think it's generally good just to search up the limited cards. So let's see what we want to add. We could potentially, and, when I go through this, I sort of just look at cards and I'm like, will this potentially be a good card to include? Swords, maybe. Our deck could be a bit slow, so that could be good to have. Card tricks, maybe we want to draw deeper in our deck and draw into our fusion monsters. Lost Will, I don't think we need here. But, you know, again, it's a maybe, so I'm going to put that in. Heavy is definitely a card you want. Mirror Force, definitely want that in the deck. Sangan can search out King of the Swamp or anything else. Confiscation, MST, I think these are pretty straightforward. Snatch Shield, we also probably want that. Morphing Jar, maybe. Again, with the card destruction, if we want to go for more turbo approach, then this might be the way to do it. We've got Call the Haunted here. That's pretty good. Can't bring back our fusion monsters, but can bring back a lot else. Ceasefire, maybe. I mean, in the side at least for flip focus strategies. Jinzo, I could also see maybe being in the deck as well. Although it's a bit tougher of a sell, but I could see it potentially working. Limiter we don't need. Premat is also a card we maybe want to have in the deck. Mage Power we don't need. We're not going for the equip focus. Magic Cylinder maybe. Maybe we need all the burn damage we can get. TT, yeah, that's a pretty good card. Let's see, did this do just original attack? Okay, it might do just full attack, in which case an equip strategy might be worth doing. But then again, I don't necessarily know if it's worth, you know, filling our deck with those bricks to do it. So I'm not going to include them. Charity, I think, is good. Scapegoat, maybe, but I'm also not really feeling the Scapegoat. But I'll put it in here in case we need the defensive pressure. I think that the Exiled Force is going to be good because I think we also want a Rota package on top of our emergency calls. That just makes sense to me. So having the Exile is good. Lily, maybe. I'm going to put that in case we need more aggressive pressure. We don't need Twin Head. Book of Moon's pretty good in general. Meta didn't summon the fusion monster that we want, so we don't really need to consider it. Reckless, again, like this would fall into the turbo category of like Morphing Jar or card destruction, but I think this deck really can suffer if it's not drawing constantly. So if you skip your draw phase for a couple turns, that's really bad, I think. So we're not going to include that. Breaker is very good here. You know, we're playing the Warrior package, so Warrior Lady probably goes in. I don't think we need Tsukiyomi. Demok we really don't need. Level Limit, again, you know, paired with Rampart Blaster, but it has anti-synergy with pretty much everything else in our deck, so I don't think we want it. And Assailant, we're not doing anything with flips, really. Protector, nope. DD Assailant, probably, because we're playing the Rotas. Maybe Vortex in the side, I could see that. Nephthys is, we don't really have the engine to support that. Pot is awkward with Miracle Fusion, so I don't want that. And Treeborn Frog doesn't really do anything here. So I think that that's going to do it for the limits. And then you can go to the semi-limits, see what's there. And we're going to add these double Rotas here. We could add Upstart Goblin as well to give us a little bit more consistency. I kind of like that. But it does slow down the clock on Rampart Blaster. But we kind of need to draw into that anyways. So I'm going to add 2 Upstart. I think this deck kind of needs the draw power. Knock is also very good. I'm going to put these in the side there. And Swap, oh, maybe. We are playing things like King, and like Clayman's not really that good either, so could potentially play Swap. I don't think this deck needs it as much, so I'm not going to include it. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Do we have any deck dev targets? Not real. Yeah, Necro doesn't do it, so yeah, can't use deck dev, and Good Goblin Housekeeping is just not impactful enough, even though we do want to be drawing into our stuff. So we've got this. Now we will be able to, or we'll be forced to cut down on this more because, you know, this is over 40 cards and we still need to fill out our deck with a bit more of the hero package. I think seeing how clogged this thing already is, I don't think we have room for the Blade Edge. I'm going to cut the Blade Edge. I'm going to cut the Necro Shade. I think I want to go more all in on things like Wild Heart and, well, I guess we need to undo the limit there. Wild Heart, so let's add 2 of those. Let's add 2 Sparkman. And let's add 2 Clayman as well. And I feel like this should be good. So we got 3 of each of the fusion tiers that we really want. Bowman, I think, also does not make the cut here. Yes, you know, we lose access to Steam Healer and Mariner, but I don't really think those are worth considering. So I'm just going to cut these out from the deck as well and cut the Bowman out, even though it is, you know, sort of the staple piece of the older version of this deck that I made back before Reaper format in Cyber format, I believe. But anyways, we've got our Righteous Justice here. I think that this is just not quite as good, but I'm going to put in the side. This could be a good side deck card for if our opponent's on more Spell and Trap heavy deck. Also, I think like we can add more emergency calls potentially. So this is another thing where like I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to play all 3 of these, but I do think that just having them here is good to consider and think about there. I don't think we need the swords. I can put it in the side though in case our opponent's on a more aggressive deck. We do not need Last Will. I think Last Will can just come out there. There are weird things you can do with it if you like poly using a monster on field and then Last Will out something, but I don't really think it's worth it. Since we're not playing Last Will, I don't think we need the Lily. We can bring this into the side in case our opponent's on a Floodgate strategy. It's another way to get through things like Gravity Bind or limit or level limit area B. And let's see. I don't think we need this Scapegoat. I can put that in the side for more aggressive matchups as well. let's see here. Do we need to go sort of like turbo aggro here? Or not turbo aggro, but just like turbo. I don't think we need the jar or the card destruction, so I'm going to take those out as well. I feel like this is pretty good so far, but we just need to make 2 more cuts. We might not need 3 emergency calls. I don't think we need Jinzo in the main. I'll take that out as well. And yeah, maybe cut down to just 2 emergency calls. We got 9 targets for this, but you know, we also have 5 searches right now for it, so I think we can cut down on those E's, put that in the side. And honestly, we don't even need it in the side. I'll just take it out entirely. So now we got 2 emergency calls. We got, I think this deck looks pretty decent overall. We could also like take out the goblins. Like we could replace one of the goblins with an emergency call because it basically does the same thing, gives us an extra card. But I feel like goblin is a bit more flexible in general. So I do think that I like the goblin here instead of the emergency call. But that's just me. You can definitely disagree with that and let me know down in the comments below what you think of that. I think this is right now the deck that I'm going for. We could also potentially, you know, experiment with things like Sakuretsu Armor or something like that. Sakuretsu might be better than Cylinder. But I do like Cylinder for getting in burn, especially if we're going for like the Rampart Blaster stuff. So I'm okay with this. Yeah, I'm okay with this so far. Saku should be fine, and then we go... I don't know what else we do. I guess we could potentially, if we're going with Necro Shaman, we could potentially go for... No, because I think we could go for like a macro strategy, but I don't think that makes sense given that we need to be banishing from our graveyard. So it doesn't make sense to have a Dimensional Fissure or Macro Cosmos for us. That'd be kind of funny. Just Necro Shaman control where you prevent them from getting any monster in grave and then you just use it as a pop. But it's also really, really bad for our version of the deck here. But I think that makes sense to me. I think this is a decent deck overall. I don't think it's like the best thing in the world because, again, this deck is not really that good. It's more just rogue, but it's a fun rogue deck. I can fill out a little bit more of the extra deck. I think Threatening Roar is very good against like OTK strategies, so it's good to have. And we could also put in like Decrees or something instead of some of this other stuff. Like maybe we don't need, well, I guess Jinzo is Decree as well. Maybe we don't need the Injection Fairy Lily. Maybe we don't need, or no, we don't need Decree. We can just fill it up with more our Righteous Justice, you know. We've got that special sort of way to deal with our opponent's back row. So we can just use these instead. I don't think we need the goats. Honestly, I don't think we need the swords. So I'm going to put in another our Righteous Justice, just to have as much spell and trap removal as possible. Actually, these could just be Dust Tornadoes. I'm just going to replace it with Dust Tornadoes. I know it's not on theme, but just thinking about it, like these are probably much better than our Righteous Justice, all things considered. So yeah, I think that this is what I'm doing for the deck overall. I can add in some more fusion monsters as well. And all we have to do here is just go monster and then fusion, search by release date, and then sort of just go through, see what we want to add here, just like in, you know, a standard deck of this type. So we just add in a bunch of fusion toolboxy cards here, just in case, you know, we manage to take control of our opponent's Stein or something, and we can do stuff with that. I don't know, Gatling, Dragoon. We should have Cyber End and, well, people know about Cyber End, Cyber Twin, so that's fine. I don't think we really need to fill up on these other stuff here. I think that this is pretty good. But that's going to do it for the deck list. Let me know what you think about this sort of video down in the comments below, and also let me know what you think of the deck. Definitely isn't perfect. I mean, one of the keys in deck building is after you build a deck, then testing it out, and I obviously have not done that yet. But I do think that this is pretty neat, and hopefully we can do some Fusion Turbo stuff. I will be making a video playing around with this deck, seeing how it performs, and then giving my thoughts on what I think should change or not change. But I think this is a kind of neat build overall, and it's cool to see Elemental Heroes sort of going more into their fusion strategy than they've been able to in the past. But that's going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. As always, if you liked what you saw here, then definitely like the video and also subscribe to the channel. We're trying to reach 1,600 subs by the end of the month, and right now we still got a fair bit to go, but I'm confident that we can make it if you all subscribe. Also, you know, if you want to play games in Chaos Return format or any other format that I feature in the channel, definitely join the Discord server linked in the description down below. And also, if you want to support me directly, I've got a Patreon linked in the description as well. If you join the Patreon, you get shouted out in these videos. So big shout outs to GeoMyFest, Rincewin, Porkchop, Coon, Brendan Donker, Tyler Compton, and Dump Truck. It really means a lot that you all support me this way and encourage me to make more videos like this in the the future. I hope that you enjoyed as always, and until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.